For an entire year, I had been quietly slipping money to my husband's former driver, a man Marcus had discarded like a worn-out receipt, fired and left with nothing to his name, and today, outside a grocery store under a flickering streetlight, that same man stopped me and whispered words that split my life clean in two. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice shaking, "don't get in the car with your husband. Take the bus. It's a matter of life and death. You'll understand everything when you see who's on that bus." But before that warning overturned everything I thought I knew. It had just been an ordinary Tuesday, one of those dull grey days. That smell faintly of dust and laundry detergent, nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just life moving quietly forward. Kesha stood behind the register of a small, cozy home store, straightening a stack of terry cloth towels with practiced hands. She was 38. But when she caught her reflection in the shop window as evening settled in, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked older, her shoulders sagged from years of lifting heavy boxes. Fine shadows lingered around her eyes, the kind no cream could ever erase. "Honey, ring this tablecloth up to," croaked a familiar voice. An elderly regular in a beige raincoat leaned on the counter. "Just check for snags this time, of course, Mrs. Patterson," Kesha replied, her voice soft and reassuring, like muscle memory. She unfolded the fabric, fingertips gliding over the linen. Her hands were rough, nails short, skin dry. Hands shaped by work. Hands that never quite felt elegant enough resting on a dinner table. She smiled politely, but her mind was somewhere else. It was the 18th. The day she committed her quiet little crime against the family budget, when the store finally closed and the metal shutters rattled down, sealing the bright displays away from the dark street. Kesha didn't head home. She pulled her coat tighter around herself. It wasn't new, 3 years old, bought on clearance but still respectable. Sensible grey. She turned toward the park instead. In her pocket, tucked inside a cracked leather wallet, was a white envelope. Inside, $40 for some people. That was lunch at a nice cafe. For Kesha, it was the winter boots she hadn't bought herself this year. But for the man waiting on a bench beneath an old maple tree, it meant survival. Otis, Marcus's former driver. The man who had driven him faithfully for 5 years until the day Marcus came home furious, tossed his keys onto the table, and announced, "I fired the old man. He's unreliable now, forgetful. And the car smells like smoke." Kesha knew Otis hadn't smoked in a decade. She also knew his real mistake was seeing too much and saying too little, but she hadn't argued. She rarely did. Instead, she quietly began saving, skipping lunches, tucking away bits of bonuses. "Taking side work, Mr. Otis," she called. Gently, he startled beneath the street lamp, his thin frame hunched, his brown skin stretched like fragile paper. "Kesha," he said, trying to stand with the help of his cane. She waved him down and pressed the envelope into his hand. His fingers were icy, trembling. "Buy your heart medicine," she said softly. "And fruit, please get fruit, baby." "Girl, you shouldn't," he whispered. "If Marcus finds out, he'll kill me." But his grip tightened around the envelope anyway. His eyes filled. "You're a saint. He doesn't deserve you." "Oh. Don't say that," she murmured, embarrassed, heat rising to her cheeks. Gratitude always made her uncomfortable. She wasn't a saint. She just remembered how Otis once picked her up from the hospital when Marcus was too busy, how he rocked Jasmine's stroller while she ran into a pharmacy. "Go home," she said, patting his shoulder. "Take care of yourself." Her house was warm, but the air felt heavy. The TV murmured in the kitchen. Marcus sat at the table, staring into his phone, a plate of untouched dinner in front of him. He was still handsome at 41. A bit of a belly, a thinning hairline. But that polished look of a city official remained the same one that had once swept Kesha off her feet. Something felt wrong. He startled when the door closed and quickly flipped his phone face down. "You're home," he said without looking up. "Dinner was good. I'm just not hungry." "You look pale," Kesha said, setting down her bag. "Everything okay at work?" "No," he snapped, then corrected himself too quickly. A crooked smile appeared. "Guilty. I mean, yes, fine, just tired. I have to go to Fairview tomorrow. Mandatory seminar. Fairview. 40 miles away. Want me to iron a shirt?" she asked. Turning on the kettle, he jumped. His phone buzzed. Again, he grabbed it like it might explode. "I'll do it. And actually I'll drive you to work tomorrow." Kesha froze. He hadn't driven her in years. "You want to?" she asked carefully. "Well, yeah." "We're family," he kissed her cheek. His lips were dry. His shirt smelled sharply unfamiliar. She ignored the knot forming in her chest. That night, she ran out for milk. The street was damp. The bodega light flickered as she stepped back outside. A shadow peeled itself from the darkness. She screamed, "Mr. Otis!" His face was grey, his breathing ragged. Fear not cold shook him. "Do not get in that car tomorrow," he whispered fiercely. "Do you hear me? Don't get in." "Why?" she gasped. "He offered so he could control you." "No." "Exactly where you are." His voice cracked. "Take the 7:15 bus. Sit there. Watch. This is life and death," he said. "The life you think is yours." Then he vanished into the dark dot above them. Marcus's silhouette crossed the lit window. On the phone again. Kesha stood under the flickering street lamp, milk in her hands, her world quietly splitting apart. Empty street where the old man had disappeared. For the first time in years, the ground beneath her solid, dependable, familiar began to shift, like sand slipping away grain by grain. That morning, Kesha lied. It was the first lie of her 20-year marriage, and it surprised her how easily it came, as if the words had been waiting patiently for this moment. "Jasmine's sick," she said calmly, her stomach's acting up. "I'll stay home for a bit, call the doctor, and go to work later." Marcus was already in the hallway, keys in hand. He didn't glance toward their daughter's room, just nodded, kissed the air beside Kesha's ear, and hurried out, muttering about being late. Kesha waited until the sound of the engine disappeared down the street. Only then did she grab her coat. Her hands shook so badly she missed the sleeve the first time. The bus station smelled of exhaust and fried food. The Fairview bus, old, tired, coughing grey smoke, was already waiting. Kesha boarded without lifting her eyes and took a seat in the very back by the window. It felt as though everyone knew why she was there, as if the truth was stamped across her forehead. The bus was half empty, a few people with empty buckets. A student lost in headphones, and to rows ahead, a woman with a little girl, maybe 7 years old. The bus lurched forward. Kesha stared out the window, watching grey apartment blocks slide by without really seeing them. Otis's words pounded in her skull. "Take the bus. Watch." The little girl shifted, knelt on her seat and turned around. She looked straight at Kesha. Time faltered. Her heart skipped, then slammed hard against her throat, stealing the air from her lungs. The girl had Marcus's eyes, the same shape, the same faint downward tilt at the corners that always made his gaze look quietly sad, the same chin, the tiny dimple Kesha had kissed so many times. The child twisted a strand of light brown hair around her finger, exactly the way Marcus did when he was nervous, but it wasn't the face that broke her. Around the girl's neck, resting against a pink jacket, hung a silver locket, an old one, oval, shaped like a shell. Kesha knew that locket. She had found it in Marcus's suit pocket 6 months earlier. "A gift for my mom's anniversary," he'd said quickly, hiding it. Then later, the story had changed. The glass broke. It got lost at the repair shop. What could you do? She had comforted him, told him it was the thought that mattered. Now the lost locket gleamed on the chest of a stranger's child. Kesha's fingers crushed the handrail until her knuckles went white. The air inside the bus, thin to nothing. She wanted to scream, to run, to make it stop. Maya, sit properly. The woman beside the girl snapped. Young, beautiful, perfectly groomed. A name surfaced in Kesha's mind without being invited. Chantal. The bus rolled into Fairview. The woman stood, took the girl's hand, and moved toward the exit. Kesha rose too. As if pulled by a string, her legs felt numb, borrowed, unreal. They got off in a quiet residential area. Kesha followed at a distance, ducking behind poles and passing strangers. She felt like a criminal tailing someone else's happiness, except there was nothing to steal. Her own happiness was disintegrating. With every step, they turned onto a lane of neat brick houses, white fences, trimmed lawns, and there it was, Marcus's silver sedan. Kesha pressed herself against the cold brick of the neighboring house. Peeking just enough to see the gate, the front door opened. Marcus stepped onto the porch. He was wearing the reindeer sweater she had given him last Christmas, the one he claimed he'd left in his office. In his hands, a steaming mug of tea. Daddy. Daddy's here, the girl screamed, dropping her backpack and running toward him. Marcus laughed, really laughed. He lifted her high, spinning her in the air. That laugh bright, genuine, young, something Kesha hadn't heard in years. My princess, he said warmly. How was the ride? He kissed the top of her head, then wrapped an arm around the woman's waist. Familiar, possessive. The woman smiled, straightened his collar, and Marcus kissed her. Not the empty peck he'd given Kesha that morning. A real kiss. Kesha slid down the wall. Her legs simply gave up. She sat on the cold, damp pavement, her coat soaking it up, not caring. This wasn't an affair. This was a life, a full, warm, real life where Marcus laughed, where he was someone's daddy, where a girl with his eyes ran into his arms. A life that hadn't included Kesha for at least 7 years. Something snapped inside her chest, a string pulled too tight for two. Long finally breaking, she covered her mouth to keep from screaming. Her shoulders shook silently as tears poured down, hot and relentless, smearing mascara onto the dull grey of her coat. She remembered every sacrifice, every excuse she'd believed. Every time she'd chosen trust over doubt. What a fool. Marcus picked up the backpack, hugged his woman, and the three of them disappeared inside. The door closed. Kesha was left alone. She curled into herself on the pavement, hugging her knees, finally letting the sound escape, a broken, quiet whimper like an animal pushed out into the cold. Much later, she stood, slowly, painfully, brushed the dirt from her coat without really seeing it, and wandered away. The trip home passed in a blur. She didn't remember the bus, the door, the hallway. She sat in the kitchen, staring at the cold kettle, and waited. Marcus came home 3 hours later, whistling. Keys clattered onto the table. Kesha, I'm home. Seminar ended early. I bought cake. He stopped. She didn't turn toward him. I saw her, Kesha said, and the girl, Maya. The silence rang. Marcus went pale. The cake box slipped from his hands and hit the floor. You were in Fairview, he whispered. She has your eyes, Kesha said evenly, and your locket. He sank into the chair across from her. The man she thought she knew finally peeling apart, layer by layer, under the weight of the truth. A husk, Marcus folded in on himself, covering his face with his hands. Kesha, I'm sorry, he sobbed, not the restrained grief of a man owning his wrongs, but something smaller, messier. Tears smeared across his cheeks as he shook. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't know how to tell you. It was 7 years ago. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I love you. But I couldn't abandon them either. Maya, she's just a child. Kesha looked at him and felt nothing, no pity, no rage, just a slow, crawling disgust. She stared at the man she had shared a bed with, shared meals with, shared decades with, and saw only a coward. You didn't want to hurt anyone, she asked quietly. You lied to me every day for 7 years, every single minute. At that moment, the front door opened. The sound was firm, confident. Mama Estelle, Marcus's mother, walked in as she always did without knocking, keys already in hand. Her presence filled the hallway like cold air. What is going on here? She demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Her eyes swept the room, Marcus sobbing, cake smashed on the floor. Kesha sitting rigid at the table. Marcus, stop. Blubbering, Estelle snapped, stand up. He obeyed instantly, wiping his face with his sleeve like a scalded child. Mama Estelle removed her gloves slowly, deliberately, placing them neatly on the table. Then she turned to Kesha. There was no sympathy in her gaze, only calculation. So she said calmly, you found out after all. It was only a matter of time. Hiding it forever was foolish. You knew, Kesha said. It wasn't a question. Of course I knew, Estelle scoffed. Who do you think helped Marcus buy that house on his salary? She pulled out a chair and sat down, spine straight, queenly. Listen to me, Kesha. You are a good housekeeper, a faithful wife, but you couldn't give my son the one thing that mattered. Kesha felt the blood drain from her face. We have a daughter, Jasmine. A daughter is fine. Estelle waved it away. But a man needs a son. An heir. You couldn't have more children. And Chantal, she's young, healthy. She already gave him one child, and will give him more. Maybe even a boy. You set him up with her, Kesha whispered. I helped my son get what he needed, Estelle cut in sharply. And if you'd been wiser, you would have understood that yourself. You saw how he suffered, how he wanted more children. But you stayed silent. You buried yourself in work. In your garden, you stopped being a wife. You became convenient. The word hit hardest, convenient. Kesha remembered the nights Marcus spoke of another child, and how exhaustion made her brush him off. We don't have the money, we have Jasmine to think about. She remembered when she stopped dressing up, stopped asking about his dreams, believing she was protecting their family. Instead, she had left the door open. I'm not excusing Marcus, Estelle continued coolly, but you aren't innocent either. Now, the important thing, you cannot divorce him. Kesha said nothing. Marcus has a career, elections are coming, a scandal would ruin him and you. Where would you go? Rent a room on a sales clerk salary. Estelle leaned forward. Everything will stay as it is. Marcus lives here, visits Chantal on weekends. You keep your status, the apartment. Jasmine finishes school in peace. Everyone wins. And if I don't agree? Kesha asked, her voice trembling. Estelle smiled thinly. Who's asking you? Think about your daughter. Do you want her to be pointed at? The child of a woman replaced by a younger model. That evening, Kesha called Tasha. She needed one voice, just one. Oh God, you poor thing. Tasha sighed. Marcus has another family. A pause. Too long you knew, Kesha said softly. Well, rumors, Tasha replied, uncomfortable, small town, people talk. I thought why hurt you? You seemed happy, was I? Kesha asked. You lived peacefully, Tasha said. Don't do anything rash. Men are like that, he provides. He doesn't hit you. Estelle's probably right. Where would you even go? Kesha ended the call. The phone felt like a brick in her hand. She stepped onto the balcony. The city blinked below her, full of people who knew, clerks, colleagues, friends, all watching her live a lie she hadn't even been invited into. You became convenient. The words burned. Yes, she was guilty. Guilty of choosing comfort over truth, silence over confrontation, fear over dignity. But the fear was gone now. Only clarity remained. Marcus slept on the couch that night, knees pulled up, small and pitiful even in his dreams. Kesha opened the closet and pulled out an old travel bag. She packed slowly, methodically. Each folded shirt felt like a brick laid into the foundation of a terrifying new life. In the morning, she would leave, but morning came. And Jasmine woke with a fever, pale, coughing. Motherhood outweighed pride. Kesha stayed. At lunchtime, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The park. Same bench. 1 hour. It's important. She knew who it was. Mr. Otis waited beneath the maple tree, sitting upright this time. Beside him lay an old driver's logbook, worn and cracked. I saw, Kesha said quietly. Good. Otis nodded. Then you're ready. He slid the book toward her. Dates, times, addresses, payments. 5 years of proof. I was his alibi, Otis said, and I stayed silent until now. I needed the job, Otis said quietly. The pension is small. My wife is sick. I sold my conscience for a paycheck. Kesha, she didn't answer. She just kept turning the pages. And then, a year ago, his voice faltered. We were driving back from Fairview. He was glowing drunk on happiness. Maya had said her first word, or something like that, and I reminded him. I said, Councilman Vaughan. Jasmine has her music school graduation today. You promised her. Otis let out a bitter breath. He looked at me like I was dirt, told me to shut up and drive, said you were strong, that you'd manage, but Chantal needed him more. He fired me the next day, said I'd become unreliable. Kesha stopped on one entry, 6 months ago. Central bank withdrawal from education fund, $3,000, transfer for roof repair in Fairview. Education fund. Her body went cold. That money was sacred, untouchable. Saved penny by penny since Jasmine's birth, every dollar bought with skipped. Meals, worn coats, years without rest, money meant for university, for tutors, for her daughter's future. Her fingers flipped faster now. $1,000 withdrawn. $5,000 withdrawn. Furniture for nursery. He emptied it, Kesha whispered. Almost completely, Otis said. I drove him every time. He said he was investing, and he was just not for Jasmine. Kesha closed the notebook. This wasn't infidelity. This was theft, not from her. From their child, from Jasmine, who stayed up late sketching buildings, who dreamed of architecture school, who believed her father was proud of her. Marcus hadn't made a mistake. He had made calculations. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. I was afraid, Otis said simply, afraid of him, afraid you wouldn't believe me. He placed his rough hand over hers. Now you have nothing left to lose. She held the notebook. It burned in her hands. At home, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She placed the notebook on the table. The sound was final. Marcus's face drained of color as he flipped through the pages. With each line, he shrank. You stole Jasmine's money, Kesha said calmly. He panicked. Promises spilled out, sales, loans, repairs, tears. She handed him a pen. Write, a promise, a deadline. No contact. He signed. And for a week, Marcus became the man she once loved. Groceries, repairs, homework at the kitchen table. Laughter returned to the apartment. Even Mama Estelle softened. You were wise to forgive, she said over tea. Family is everything. Kesha wanted to believe God. How she wanted to believe. That evening, Jasmine laughed at dinner. Marcus smiled. The apartment felt warm again. And for the first time in weeks, Kesha slept. Deeply. Peacefully. Until the sound of a phone vibrating in the dark pulled her back to the surface. Marcus's phone. Face down on the nightstand. Buzz. Buzz. Kesha opened her eyes. The storm, she realized, hadn't passed. It had only gone quiet. Marcus hugged her tightly, relief melting into his voice. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "I won't let you down. Never again." Kesha closed her eyes, for the first time in a long while. Sleep came easily, no weight on her chest. No racing thoughts, just quiet hope. She imagined Sunday soft and simple, a walk in the park, Jasmine getting into college, the tuition money sitting safely where it belonged. A life that had cracked, but somehow been glued back together. She felt victorious. She had won back her husband, won back her daughter's future. Saved her home. Sunday morning arrived dressed in sunlight. The kitchen filled with gold, as if the day itself was blessing her decision. Kesha stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming under her breath. Marcus was still asleep. Jasmine had gone out for a jog. Her body felt light, as if she had finally set down a heavy backpack she'd been dragging uphill for years. She believed the worst was over. She believed love and patience could fix anything. She didn't know this was only the calm. She didn't know her victory was made of paper and air. The pancakes cooled on the table. Her pen, stubborn and traitorous, stopped writing just as she started a grocery list. Annoyed. She remembered a spare pen in Marcus's briefcase, tossed carelessly in the hallway. She opened it, searching by habit. Her fingers touched something smooth, glossy. She pulled it out without thinking. An ultrasound image, black and white, grainy. A tiny speck of life floating in darkness at the bottom. May 22nd, 2 days ago. The night Marcus had said he was staying late at work. The hallway spun. The sweet smell of vanilla turned sharp, sickening. Her stomach clenched as she flipped the photo over. "My son, my heir, waiting for you." Marcus's handwriting. Before her mind could catch up, a phone rang inside the pocket of his coat. Not his main phone, the second one. The one he had sworn was gone forever. Kesha answered without lifting it to her ear. Mama Estelle's voice cut through the air, sharp and certain. "Marcus, honey, why aren't you picking up?" Chantal called. "She's crying hormones. Calm her down. Tell her everything is going according to plan." Kesha stayed silent. "Hello, Marcus." The irritation crept in. "Why are you still playing house with that helper of yours? Be patient, just a little longer. Once Chantal gives birth to my grandson, we'll transfer the land and kick Kesha out. Get her to sign the papers while she's feeling generous. The lawyer said once it's joint property, we can sell it to cover the debts." Kesha pressed end call. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. The sound woke Marcus. He stepped into the hallway, half asleep, rubbing his chest. "Kesha, what fell?" She turned slowly, in one hand. The ultrasound, on the floor, the phone. Understanding hit him instantly. His face hardened. No tears this time, no begging. Just cold. "You were digging through my things," he said. "Helper," Kesha repeated softly. "That's what I am to you." He poured water straight from the pitcher, drank like an animal. Cornered. "And what did you expect to be?" he snapped. "A wife? Look at yourself. You turned into a function. Cook, clean, fetch. There's nothing to talk to you about." The words struck deep and true. "Yes," she said quietly. "I am guilty. I let our marriage die." She lifted her head, her voice steady now. "But you stole from your daughter. You planned my life like trash to be discarded. You could have left honestly. But you wanted everything." He smirked. "The land will pay the debts. Half is mine." She saw him clearly then. Not her husband, an enemy. "Get out," she said. When he laughed, she raised her voice. "I'll scream. I'll tell everyone. I have nothing left to lose." Something in her eyes stopped him. The door slammed. Kesha slid to the floor, the apartment suddenly hollow. The ultrasound photo crumpled in her fist. No tears came, only clarity, cold and sharp. They wanted a war she wouldn't fight for. Love or the past, she would fight for the last thing they couldn't take from her, her dignity. She stood, put on old gloves. and stepped outside to the small patch of land behind the building, the land they wanted so badly. And she began to work. She worked furiously, chopping weeds as if they were enemies with faces and names. Dirt flew up, clinging to her skin, streaking her clothes. She didn't feel the ache in her arms or the weight of her body, only the steady, violent pulse beating in her temples. Kesha, she flinched and turned. At the gate stood Pop Franklin. Marcus's father looked the way he always had, tall, thin, shoulders bowed by decades of quiet surrender. A man who had spent his life as a shadow beside Mama Estelle's iron will. At family dinners, he barely spoke, 2 sentences at most, a nod, a sigh. "Please leave, Pop Franklin," Kesha said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I have nothing to discuss with your family." But he didn't leave. He opened the gate and stepped inside, carefully, almost reverently, as if afraid to hurt the ground beneath his feet. In his eyes, those usually dull, watery eyes, something unfamiliar burned. Resolve, desperation. "I didn't come as an ambassador," he said quietly. "I came as a man." He walked to the old apple tree and rested, his palm against its twisted trunk. 40 years, he murmured. 40 years I watched Louise Estelle break people. First me, I wanted to be an artist once. She said it was nonsense. Send me to the factory, stability, she called it. He swallowed. Then she took Marcus, molded him, sculpted this. He looked at Kesha, and the pain in his gaze dulled her anger for a moment. "I stayed silent when she drove away the woman before you. Silent when she taught him to lie. I told myself we'd endure, that love would be enough." He reached into his cardigan and pulled out a small black flash. "Drive. This morning, while you were at work, they sat in the kitchen. Estelle, Marcus, their lawyer. They thought the old man was deaf, watching television. His hand trembled not from age, but from fury held for decades. I turned on my recorder." He placed the flash drive in her hand. "Everything is there, the land, the papers, how they planned to trick you while you were vulnerable. How Marcus laughed and said you'd sign anything if he cried a little." The plastic burned her palm. "Why?" she asked. "You're betraying your wife, your son." "I'm saving what's left of my soul," he said bitterly. "I won't die knowing I let them destroy another life." He leaned closer. "And one more thing. Chantal is at the conservatory. There's a recital. Marcus went there, bought her necklace, gold, rubies, said it was a gift from his mother, for the grandson. Rubies." Kesha remembered Marcus saying they couldn't afford new boots for her. "The concert starts in half an hour." Franklin added, "Half the town will be there." He met her eyes. "Estelle fears only one thing, exposure. Marcus is brave only in the dark." A plan snapped into place inside Kesha, clear, sharp, unavoidable. She didn't need years of court battles. She didn't need lawyers she couldn't afford. She needed truth, loud truth. She ripped off her gloves. "Thank you, Pop," she said, calling him that for the first time. A tear slid down his cheek. "Go, daughter," he said softly, "and don't pity them." She had 20 minutes. She changed, grabbed Jasmine's speaker, ran. The conservatory buzzed with perfume, flowers, nervous laughter. Parents adjusted bow ties, girls clutched sheet music. Kesha cut through it all like ice. She saw them instantly. Marcus polished, smiling, Chantal glowing, pregnant, perfect. Mama Estelle standing apart, a queen surveying her kingdom. Marcus held a velvet box. Intermission was announced. The noise softened. "Good evening," Kesha said loudly. Marcus froze. She placed the speaker on a table and pressed play. Mama Estelle's voice filled the lobby. Once she gives birth, we'll take the land and throw Kesha out. People turned. Silence spread. He said she's gullible. She'll sign anything. Marcus's voice followed. Chantal went pale. You're paying for my delivery. With your daughter's money, she whispered. The recording ended. Judgment hung thick in the air. Mama Estelle sagged. Pop Franklin stepped forward. I'm leaving you, Estelle. Chantal tore the necklace from her neck and threw it at Marcus before running out. Marcus stood alone, small, hollow. You destroyed everything, he whispered. No, Kesha said calmly. I turned on the lights. 8 months later, winter came heavy with snow. Kesha stood inside her small shop. Warm light, linen, throws, a life built by her own hands. Pop Franklin visited often, painted again, lived. Marcus vanished, Mama Estelle hid, Jasmine passed. Her finals with honours, they drank tea together, steam rising like breath. It wasn't happiness, it was peace, quiet, earned. Kesha Vaughan stood tall, life went on hard, honest, real.